The notification came at 4:47 inches the morning. I know the exact time because I had not slept. I was sitting in the leather chair by the window in my study, the same chair where I had signed the papers that made my son a co-owner of the property management company I had built over 31 years, and I was watching the driveway. 3 suitcases had disappeared from the garage 2 days ago. I noticed. I always notice. That is how I built a company worth $4 million. You notice things, you say nothing, and you wait. The notification was from the bank. A transfer. $43,000 moved from the operating account I shared with my son into a personal account I did not recognize. The timestamp was 11:58 p.m. the night before, Christmas Eve. I set the phone face down on the armrest. I did not call him. I did not walk down the hall and knock on his bedroom door. I sat in the dark with my coffee going cold, and I thought about the first time I ever held him. He was 6 pounds, 4 ounces. He had my father's ears. I thought about the morning I taught him to drive in the parking lot of a church on Route 9, and how he laughed when he hit the curb, and how I laughed too. I thought about the day I handed him a 10% stake in the company with his name engraved on a crystal paperweight, and the way his wife smiled at me from across the table like she had just won something. Then I picked up my phone and made a different call entirely. My name is Raymond. I am 64 years old. I am going to tell you what happened over the next 7 days, and I want you to understand something before I begin. I did not act out of anger. By the time Christmas morning came and I walked into a house that echoed because half the furniture was gone, I was not angry. I was just very, very clear. Let me go back to the beginning. My wife Patricia passed 11 years ago. Breast cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end. We had one son, my son Derek, who was 26 when she died, and living in Denver with a woman none of us had met yet. He came home for the funeral, stayed 3 weeks, helped me sort through her things, and somewhere in those 3 weeks I made a decision that I have spent the last 4 years regretting. I told him he should move back. I told him the house was too big for one person. I told him the company needed him. The woman from Denver did not come back with him. Instead, 8 months later, he came home with someone new. Her name was Cassandra. She shook my hand at the front door with both of hers, the kind of handshake that already wants something, and she looked around the foyer with its original hardwood floors and the chandelier Patricia had picked out in 1998, and she said, "Derek has told me so much about this house. Not about me, about the house. I want to be fair. There were good years. Derek came into the business and he worked hard. At first, he had real instincts for the residential side, for reading which properties would hold value, and there were quarters where his decisions made us real money. I gave him a raise. I increased his stake to 25%. I bought them a car for their wedding gift, a good car, not a showy one, because Patricia always said showy was what people do when they are not sure of themselves. I paid for the wedding. I paid for the honeymoon. When Cassandra wanted to renovate the second floor of the house, the floor they lived on, I wrote the check without being asked twice. The first time I felt the ground shift under me, I told myself I was imagining it. It was a Tuesday in February, about 2 years into their marriage. I came home from the office, and there was a man I had never seen measuring the living room with a laser tool. Not the second floor. My living room. Cassandra came in behind me and said they were thinking about opening up the space, and that the designer had some wonderful ideas. I asked her when we had discussed this. She said Derek had mentioned it. I went and found Derek in the kitchen, and he said he thought I would like it. I said I would like to be consulted before strangers measured my house. He said I was being sensitive. That word, sensitive. I stored it. After that, I started paying closer attention. Not obviously, I have never been obvious, but I began to keep records. I am an accountant by training, a property manager by profession, and a very patient man by nature. I kept a file on my personal laptop. Not out of suspicion, I told myself at the time. Just out of habit. By spring of last year, the file was 47 pages long. Cassandra had charged $11,000 to a household account she had talked me into opening for shared expenses, she said, groceries and utilities, and the kind of thing that made sense when family lives together. I had agreed because it seemed reasonable, and because I wanted things to feel like a home. Over 18 months, The charges included a spa weekend in Sedona, a leather sectional for the second-floor sitting room, airline tickets, and 4 charges from a jewelry store in the city that I did not recognize. Derek's salary had increased 3 times. He was drawing $104,000 a year from a company where I still held 75% ownership and served as sole trustee of the founding trust. He also had a company card. The company card had been used at a resort in the Bahamas, a steakhouse in Manhattan, and this one I had to look at twice a private charter service out of a regional airport 40 minutes from our house. I said nothing. I want you to understand why. It was not weakness. It was not denial. It is something my father told me once when I was about 12 years old, and I had found out that a boy on my baseball team had been stealing quarters from my equipment bag. My father said, "Do not let a thief know what you know. Let them keep stealing until you are ready. Then take everything back at once." I was getting ready. In September, I had a quiet conversation with my attorney, a woman named Gloria who had handled my estate planning for 16 years. I told her what I had found. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Raymond, you have more control here than you think." We spent 2 hours going through the structure of the trust, the operating agreements, the property deeds. She made notes. I made notes. I left her office feeling something I had not felt in a long time. I felt like myself. In October, I moved the primary operating account into a new structure that required dual verification for any transfer over $5,000, but with a 72-hour delay on any action Derek initiated. To him, nothing looked different. The account numbers were the same. The interface was the same. What was different was that any large transfer he made would sit in a queue for 3 days before it processed, and I would receive an alert the moment he initiated it. I set the alert to come to my phone and my personal email. I also quietly listed 2 of the rental properties, ones held in my name alone, not in the shared LLC with a broker I trusted, not for sale, for appraisal. I wanted to know what I had, exactly, in case I needed to know quickly. November passed. Thanksgiving was quiet. Cassandra made a point of telling me 3 times that she had planned the whole meal herself, which was partially true and which I acknowledged graciously. Derek opened a good bottle of wine, and we sat at the table that had been in this dining room since before he was born, and I thought, they have no idea. There is something clarifying about that. When you know and the other person does not, the whole room looks different. You can afford to be generous. I complimented the food. I meant it. The week before Christmas, things accelerated. Derek asked me casually, over breakfast, not looking up from his phone, whether the Hendricks account receivable had cleared. It had. I said yes. He nodded and said good in the way people say good when they are thinking about something else. That afternoon, I received a notification that he had initiated a wire transfer, $43,000. The receiving account number was not one of our business accounts. I ran it through a contact I have at a title company who owed me a favor. It traced back to a travel concierge service, a luxury one. The 3 suitcases had disappeared from the garage the same evening. I did not sleep that night. Not because I was devastated, because I was thinking. Christmas morning, I came downstairs at 6. The house was very quiet. I put on coffee and walked from room to room. The living room, fine. The kitchen, fine. I went upstairs to the 2nd floor. Their bedroom door was open. The bed was made with the precision of a room that has been vacated, not slept in. The closet, half empty. The bathroom, cleared. Cassandra's collection of face creams and serums that had colonized the counter for 3 years gone. In the sitting room, the leather sectional I had paid for was still there. On the coffee table was a bowl of those little chocolate balls wrapped in gold foil that she put out every Christmas. Decorative. They always looked better than they tasted. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked back downstairs, refilled my coffee, and called Gloria. "Merry Christmas," she said, when she picked up on the 2nd ring. She had been expecting my call. We had spoken on December 22nd. I had told her, if the transfer processes, we begin. The transfer had processed at midnight. Christmas had arrived. So had we. "Merry Christmas, Gloria," I said. "Let's begin." The first call after Gloria was to the company's bank. I informed them that, effective immediately, Derek's authorization on the operating account was suspended pending a legal review. This was within my rights, as sole trustee. The banker was apologetic and professional. I thanked him. The second call was to our IT contractor, a young man named Sal who had set up our property management software and who I paid well because good technical people are worth every dollar. I asked him to revoke Derek's administrative access to our systems. Tenant records, lease agreements, maintenance requests, rent collection, all of it. He asked if there was a problem. I said there had been an unauthorized transfer and I was taking protective measures. He said he would have it done within the hour. He had it done in 40 minutes. The third call took longer to make. Not because I was hesitant, because I had to find the number. My son had a life insurance policy that listed me as the contingent beneficiary. That was not the call. The call I am referring to was to the leasing office of an apartment complex 6 miles from our house. A place called Birchwood Commons. Not luxurious. Clean, safe, reasonable. I had looked it up 3 weeks earlier. They had a 2-bedroom available January 1st. I had already put down a deposit in Derek and Cassandra's names as a Christmas gift, paid 3 months in advance. I left a message with the leasing manager confirming the move-in date. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and I wrote my son a letter. I am not going to read you the whole letter. It was 4 pages and it was precise. I told him what I had found and when I had found it. I told him about the household account, the company card, the charter service, the $43,000 wire. I told him that his employment with the company was terminated effective December 26th and that his equity stake was subject to a buyout clause in the operating agreement. A clause, I noted, that he had signed without reading carefully, because if he had read it carefully, he would have seen that a termination for cause reduced his 25% to a buyout value of 15 cents on the dollar. I told him that the house had always been mine, that he and Cassandra had been guests in my home, and that I expected them to move into Birchwood Commons no later than January 15th. I told him I had prepaid 3 months of rent because I am his father and I love him, and some things do not stop being true just because other things become true alongside them. I sealed the envelope. I placed it on the kitchen table where he always sat for breakfast. I put the bowl of gold-wrapped chocolates on top of it as a paperweight. Then I drove to my friend Harold's house for Christmas dinner. Harold has been my friend for 38 years. His wife makes a standing rib roast that Patricia always said was the best she'd ever had. I had a glass of very good Bordeaux and I ate until I was full, and I sat by Harold's fireplace, and I did not check my phone until 9 o'clock that evening. By then I had 11 missed calls, all from Derek. 2 from a number I didn't recognize, which, based on the area code, was probably a hotel somewhere warm. I put the phone back in my coat pocket and had a second glass of the Bordeaux. The calls continued over the following days. I let them go to voicemail. I listened to each one. The first 3 were confused. "Dad, what's going on? Call me back. I don't understand." The fourth one had Cassandra in the background, and Derek's voice was different, tighter, the way it gets when she is standing next to him telling him what to say. The fifth was just Cassandra, which surprised me, because she had always been careful to work through Derek. She said this was a misunderstanding. She said we should talk like adults. She said some things about how much they loved me that I noted were not accompanied by any explanation of the $43,000. The sixth call was Derek again, alone. His voice had changed again, quieter. He said he knew he had made mistakes. He said he could explain. He said he was sorry. I believed the last part. I have known my son for 38 years, and I know what his sorry sounds like. It sounded real. It probably was real. Remorse and accountability are different things, though, and I have lived long enough to know the difference. I called him back on December 29th. He answered before the first ring finished. He said Dad in a way that had a lot of weight in it. I said hello. There was a silence. Then he started to explain the business pressures, Cassandra's stress about money, the feeling that things were unfair, the sense that he had contributed more than he was recognized for. I listened to all of it. I did not interrupt. When he finished, I said, "I heard everything you said. I want you to know I understand." He exhaled. I think he thought that meant something different than what it meant. I said, "The letter stands. I want you out by January 15th. I've paid your first 3 months at Birchwood. After that, you're on your own." He said, "Dad, please." I said, "Derek, you took $43,000 from our company account on Christmas Eve. I need you to understand that. I know that. I need you to understand that I can document every dollar back 4 years. I am not taking you to court because you are my son, but you are not living in my house anymore." The silence on his end lasted a long time. Then he said, "What about Cassandra?" I said, "That's between you and Cassandra." He moved out January 12th, 3 days early. I was not home when it happened. I had arranged to be at a property inspection across town. When I came home, the second floor was empty. The leather sectional was still there. I had told him in the letter it was purchased with household funds and was to remain. The bowl of gold chocolates was still on the coffee table. I stood in the doorway of that empty room for a moment. Then, I went downstairs and made dinner. In February, Gloria completed the paperwork on the equity buyout. Derek received a check for what the operating agreement entitled him to. It was not nothing. It was also not what he would have had if he had been patient, if he had been honest, if he had stayed the person I thought I was building a company alongside. He did not call when the check arrived. He sent a text message. "Received it. Thank you." I replied, "You're welcome." That was the whole conversation. The company is running well. I brought in a property manager named Victor on a contract basis, and he has been excellent. The rental properties I had appraised are doing what good property does. They are quietly accumulating value while I sleep. I have been sleeping better than I have in 3 years. I want to say something to you before I finish, because I suspect some of you are in a version of this situation right now. Maybe it is a son or a daughter. Maybe it is a sibling or a business partner. Maybe someone in your life has mistaken your generosity for weakness, your patience for ignorance, your love for a leverage point. Here is what I learned. There is a kind of person who watches you give and give and give, and what they see is not love. What they see is inventory. They are cataloging what you have, calculating what they can access, and waiting for the right moment. They are not doing this because they are evil. They are doing this because they have never been made to see you as a person rather than a resource. That is a failure, and it is partly theirs and partly the failure of everyone who never required better of them. The only way to correct that failure is to become unavailable to it. I did not do what I did to punish my son. I did it because the version of our relationship that had existed for the past 4 years was not a relationship. It was an arrangement that benefited one side. And I had decided quietly, patiently, in the leather chair by the window at 4:47 inches the morning, on Christmas Day, that I was done with arrangements. My father's name was Walter. He came to this country with $40 in a suitcase, and he built enough to pass something on. He told me once that the most dangerous thing a man can do is let people forget that he has limits, because once they forget, they stop being careful. And once they stop being careful, they stop being trustworthy. And once they stop being trustworthy, they are no longer the people you thought they were. The house is quiet now. My house. I have been refinishing the floors in the study. Patricia always said they needed it. She was right. They look good. The whole room looks good, actually lighter somehow, now that it is just mine again. I kept the gold chocolates on the coffee table upstairs. I don't know why. Maybe because they were always decorative and never really meant to be eaten. Maybe because some things look better from a distance, and there is nothing wrong with knowing the difference. My phone is on the table beside me. It has not rung in 11 days. I find I do not mind the silence at all.